It's news time. Information is power. Be current. The news headline: Kano protesters tell Buhari we can't travel in peace. Nigeria is crumbling. The news in full. Protesters stormed the ancient city of Kano on Friday to express their displeasure over incessant killings occurring in the country, especially those rocking the entire north. And most of the protesters were chanting songs of peace, lamenting that the country was crumbling under the weight of insecurity. The protesters also called on President Muhammadu Buhari and state governors to show more interest in addressing insecurity in the north. The young persons who marched to the government house in Kano carried a banner with the inscription, "No more bloodshed." Zainab Nasir Ahmad, who led the peaceful protest, lamented how insecurity was threatening the lives and livelihood of Nigerians. Ahmad said, "We come to share our concern and send a message to our leaders. We are tired of the worsening state of insecurity in the country. Every now and then, lives are lost, people are being unjustly killed like animals, and we demand the return of peace in our society. We are saying enough is enough, no more bloodshed. Out of school children figure is witnessing a massive rise of orphans everywhere. We can't travel in peace. The economy is crumbling. People are burnt while traveling." The protesters marched from Audu Bako Secretariat to the Kano government house, where security operatives received the group of protesters, listened to them and promised to take the matter further to the appropriate quarters. Meanwhile, following the recent spike in terror attacks in Sokoto and Katsina states, President Muhammadu Buhari has dispatched a high-level delegation made up of heads of national intelligence and security services to the two states. According to a statement by the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, on Friday, Buhari expects the delegation to present an immediate situation report and recommendations on actions to follow to effectively deal with the worrying situation. And also, the defunct Social Democratic Party, SDP, Professor Yowuse Aga has urged separatist agitators to go about the agitations in a civilized manner to avoid bloodshed. In an interview with Vincent Kalu, the Professor Agia, a former senator who has served twice as minister and twice as ambassador, said that the three zones that have produced presidents should wait for the other three zones to have president. After that, he noted that the president should be chosen purely through popular contest, devoid of zoning. Many Nigerians have tried to go back in history to situate Nigerians' problems in the amalgamation of 1914. They say the Nigerians' amalgamation into one country should never be taking place because of our differences. These groups insist that the amalgamation's expiration date is over and is now the time for the dissolution of the federation. But I say these people are wrong. There is no manual for the formation of nations. Wars, accidents, imperialism, necessity, agreement, arbitrations, and consensus have all given birth to countries. Our nation was born from imperialism and became a British colony after the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. But we shook off the shackles of colonialism and emerged as an independent nation. The whole world still understanding that Nigeria would be a great nation and would wipe away the tears of all black people of the world by building a great democracy and a republic where justice and honor, peace and progress will be showcased. The reasons for the failure to attain greatness are that we have poor leaders and poor followers who have not been able to make nation building their number one priority. Our leaders have continued to wallow in ethnic racism and corruption. Ironically, it was based on Pan-African unity and nationalism, and our founding fathers got independence. But soon after independence, we have systematically destroyed every fabric of nation building through corruption and ethnic racism. The last 6 years have been the very worst in throwing up Nigeria's fault lines. The parties have failed to give leadership and they lack ideological commitment, purpose, or clarity. The weak institutions of states have been unable to defend democracy, and the Nigerian people have yet not resolved on national greatness. When we decide, nobody can stop us, the professor says. The professor also noted that the Nigerians elite must come together and overcome their apathy and decide to make Nigeria great through comprehensive restructuring of the federation, saying that we need more efficient and leaner federal, civil and public service, and that we need the states to be stronger and the federal government to divest itself of its overwhelming control at the center, saying that we must resolve to tackle tribalism with greater intensity than we have fought corruption, saying that the last thing we need to do in addressing our nation's calamity is to recruit into politics and public sphere people with sound character who see wrong as wrong and who are courageous to stand up to forces that seek to destroy Nigeria. Asking about insecurity, saying that we started with Boko Haram and now ISWAP, saying that the United Arab Emirates recently named some Nigerians sponsoring the insurgent group, saying that Nigerians were excited, thinking that those who have contributed to the plunging this country into the crisis that has got millions of dollars and the carnage that followed will be prosecuted. However, the presidency said charging them is not a priority, and the professor was asked about his view on this particular statement. Response saying that the view is that the government has been living in denial and that Nigeria is first starting from a civil war that religious extremists and ethnic bigotry have foisted over us. The government has invented semantics of deception, which is helping terrorists by packaging them as bandits and even worse, non-state actors. I was walking on eggshells to call the foreign Fulani terrorists arsonists, rapists and land grabbers through genocide as non-state actors. Kidnapping has been packaged as a foreign flourishing business as well. Perhaps this government is slowly manufacturing our consent and clandestining origin of our surrender to a Taliban-type insurrection, and the facts are too glaring to say otherwise, saying that the government knows the sponsor of these asymmetric wars and they know how to block their funding and know far more than they wish the public to know. We lift our eyes to God in the knowledge that every terrorist era has an expiry date, and may God Almighty hasten such expiry. And this was the response of the professor, talking about how the government has claimed, to be weak to address the situation of the terrorism in the nation. The movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, MASOB, has celebrated the release of 19 of their members who have been detained since 2006. The celebration coincided with 10 years anniversary of the death of Igbo leader Dim Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, Eze Igbo Gburugburu. In a statement, MASOB leader Uchenna Madu described Dim Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu as the greatest Igbo man that has ever lived. The statement reads in part: Dim Chukwuemeka still remains the greatest Nigerian man that ever lived. He laid an unforgettable foundation for enhancement and restoration of true Africanism and total liberation of black man from Western domination. Ojukwu was the president of Biafra and the general of the People's Army. He stood for justice, total freedom, and equity for us all. We are celebrating a living legend, a symbol of Igboism, the lion that is fear conquers the enemy of his people. Today, we have gathered to reflect, refresh, and revive the consciousness of Ojukwuism in Igbo land.